Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a place where everything you counted on failed? The job you thought was secure disappears. The relationship you thought would last forever breaks apart. The plan you thought was unshakable collapses overnight. And suddenly fear creeps in, whispering, "You're not strong enough. You won't make it this time." But here's the truth. What feels like the end of everything is often the beginning of becoming fearless. Because fearlessness is not built when everything is working, everything fails. And if you stay with me to the very end, you're going to discover not only how to face fear, but how to rise above it, even when the ground beneath you seems to give way. Redefined fearlessness doesn't mean you never feel fear. It means you've decided that fear will not be the driver of your life. Courage is not, "I'm not scared." Courage is, "I feel scared, but I'm still moving." Shift the source of your strength when all else fails. What's left? The temptation is to say nothing, but that's not true. What's left is your character, your faith, your resilience, your inner power. The world may strip away your resources, but it cannot strip away your resolve. Stand firm and the storms will come. Failures will happen. But the ones who rise are those who stand still long enough to realize storms pass. Fear tells you the storm is forever. Fearlessness knows it is temporary. So when everything else fails, don't see it as your downfall. See it as your refining fire. Don't see it as the death of your dream. See it as the birthplace of your courage. Fear will always knock at your door, but fearlessness is choosing who answers. And if you can make that choice today, when all else fails, you won't just survive, you'll rise stronger than ever before. Most of us grow up believing that fearless people are those who never feel afraid. We imagine the hero standing tall on the battlefield, the leader who walks into a boardroom without a hint of doubt, or the performer who steps onto the stage with perfect confidence. And when we compare ourselves to those images, we think, "I could never be fearless because I feel afraid all the time." But here's the truth. Fearlessness is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward, even when fear is shouting the loudest in your mind. Fear is a natural response. It warns us of danger. It signals uncertainty. It tells us that something matters. But if fear is allowed to dominate, it paralyzes. It convinces you to stay in comfort zones, to remain silent when you should speak, to retreat when you should advance. The most fearless people in history were not free from fear. They simply refused to let fear make the final decision for them. Think about it. Every breakthrough in your life, no matter how small, was born out of a moment when you felt fear and did it anyway. Remember the first time you tried something completely new? You probably felt shaky. Maybe your hands trembled, maybe your heart raced. But you took that step, and the moment you did, something shifted. You realized that the fear you carried was louder in your imagination than it was in reality. Fear loses its grip the very moment you walk forward into it. But the challenge is this: moving forward doesn't come naturally when fear is real. When you're facing financial uncertainty, fear screams, "Don't take risks." When you're dealing with rejection, fear whispers, "Don't put yourself out there again." When failure feels fresh, fear insists, "Don't try. You'll only fail again." In those moments, fear looks logical. It feels protective, but in truth, it is only protective in the short term. In the long term, it robs you of growth, opportunity, and destiny. This is why fearlessness must be a conscious decision. It's not a feeling you wait for, it's a choice you make. You don't wake up fearless. You wake up with doubts, questions, and insecurities. And then you decide, "I will not let this stop me today." That decision has to be made again and again, sometimes moment by moment. The most powerful part of becoming fearless is realizing that courage is often quiet. It's not always the roar of the lion. Sometimes it's the trembling voice that still speaks, the shaking hand that still signs the paper, the weary heart that still beats forward. Fearlessness is often hidden in the small steps. The phone call you were afraid to make but did. The opportunity you were nervous to take but accepted. The forgiveness you were hesitant to give but offered anyway. These may seem ordinary, but they are the training ground for extraordinary courage. And here's the secret. Every time you decide to move forward despite fear, you weaken fear's power over you. The first time you face it, it feels overwhelming. The second time, it's still strong, but you've got proof that you survived it once before. The third time, you start to see fear for what it really is, a barrier made of smoke, intimidating from a distance, but powerless once you walk through it. Fear thrives on hesitation. It gains strength the longer you wait, but the moment you act, it begins to crumble. So when life backs you into a corner and fear tells you, you can't, that is the moment you must decide, I will. Not because you aren't afraid, but because fear will not have the final word. Fearlessness is not about being invincible. It is about being determined. Determined that fear will not dictate your choices, your dreams, or your future. When all else fails, when plans collapse, when certainty disappears, the only thing left standing is your decision. Will you allow fear to rule you, walk forward anyway? That single choice is the difference between a life constrained and a life fulfilled. Fear will always be present, but it does not have to be powerful. You are the one who gives it permission to stay or sends it packing. And so the next time fear knocks, don't wait for it to disappear. Don't wait until you feel ready. Take the step while your knees are shaking, while your voice is trembling, while your heart is racing. That is what makes you fearless. Not that you didn't feel afraid, but that you refuse to let fear decide your future. We spend most of our lives trying to hold everything together. We organize, we plan, we prepare, and we convince ourselves that as long as we stay in control, everything will be fine. But life has a way of showing us how fragile that control really is. The job you thought was permanent can vanish. The person you thought would always be there can walk away. The plan you wrote down so carefully can fall apart in ways you never imagined. And in those moments when everything fails, when the control you depended on slips out of your hands, you are left asking, what now? It's in those moments that you learn a powerful truth. Your greatest strength does not come from control. Control is an illusion. It gives comfort, but it cannot sustain you when life throws the unexpected your way. Real strength is revealed not in the moments when everything goes according to plan, but in the moments when nothing does. When you have no script to follow, when you cannot predict the outcome, when all that's left is what's inside of you, courage and faith. Courage is the ability to step forward even when the path is unclear. It is standing in the middle of uncertainty and saying, I may not know how this will end, but I will not let fear paralyze me here. Faith is the belief that even when everything you leaned on has collapsed, something greater is still holding you. Faith tells you that your story doesn't end in the ruins, but that there is more ahead, even if you cannot see it yet. Together, courage and faith are stronger than any amount of control you thought you had. Think about the times in your life when you grew the most. Was it when everything was smooth, predictable, and easy? Or was it when everything seemed to fall apart and you had to reach deeper than you ever had before? It is often in the failures, the breakdowns, the losses that we discover a part of ourselves we never knew existed, a resilience that only rises when tested, a strength that only shows up when the control we trusted is stripped away. When all else fails, courage and faith are what remain because they are the only things that cannot be taken from you. The world can strip away possessions, positions, and people, but it cannot steal your decision to keep standing. It cannot take away your belief that tomorrow holds possibilities greater than today's pain. That is where real power comes from. The mistake many of us make is thinking strength is about control, keeping everything neat, tidy, predictable. But life is not neat. It is messy. It is unpredictable. It throws storms that don't ask for your permission. And if your strength is built only on control, then every storm will undo you. But if your strength is built on courage and faith, then you will outlast the storm. You may bend, but you will not break. You may stumble, but you will rise again. Here's what courage and faith look like in practice. Courage says, I don't know if I'll succeed, but I'll try anyway. Faith says, even if I fail, I believe this failure is not the end of me. Courage says, I will stand even if I stand alone. Faith says, I am never truly alone because there is something greater guiding me. This combination allows you to keep moving forward when everything else is crumbling around you. It's easy to believe in yourself when the road is smooth, but real belief is proven in the storm. When you wake up and everything you thought you could rely on is gone, yet you still choose to rise. You still choose to believe. You still choose to take the next step. That is when you realize what you were truly made of. That is when you discover that the greatest strength you have was never about control, but about courage to act and faith to endure. So the next time life feels like it has fallen apart and you are tempted to cling tighter to control, let go. Stop trying to control what you cannot. Instead, lean on what remains: your courage to move, your faith to believe, your resilience to endure. Control will fail you, but courage and faith will carry you. And in the end, that is where true fearlessness is born. Most people live with the belief that their confidence, their courage, and their strength are all tied to their circumstances. When life is good, they feel strong. When the paycheck is steady, when the relationships are secure, when the plans are working, they feel fearless. But the moment those circumstances shift, their confidence crumbles. And that's because they never realize that true fearlessness cannot be built on what happens around you. It must be built on what happens within you. Circumstances will always change. Seasons of life come and go. There are times when doors open easily, and times when every door seems shut. There are moments when opportunities pour in, and moments when they all seem to dry up. If your courage rises and falls with those shifts, then fear will always have the power to control you. But if your courage comes from within, then no matter what happens outside, you still stand. You still move forward, you still remain unshaken. True fearlessness is born the day you stop saying, "I'll be confident when everything lines up," and instead declare, "Even if nothing lines up, I will still rise." It is born when you realize that strength is not given to you by the world, it is drawn out from the depths of who you are. When you stop waiting for circumstances to make you bold and start choosing boldness regardless of circumstances, that is when you become truly fearless. This is why some of the most powerful people you will ever meet are not the ones who had the easiest paths, but the ones who had the hardest ones. They faced storms that could have broken them, yet they discovered that what was inside of them was greater than anything they faced outside. That discovery does not come when life is easy. It comes when life is heavy. It comes when the pressure is high, when the night feels long, when the circumstances scream, you give up. That's the place where inner power is revealed. And what is this inner power? It is your ability to choose perspective, to choose resilience, to choose belief over doubt, hope over despair, action over paralysis. The world can take away many things, but it cannot take away your power to choose how you will respond. And when you realize that, you discover freedom. Because no matter what is happening around you, you still hold the pen to your story. Think about it. Two people can face the exact same situation, yet respond in completely different ways. One collapses under the weight of fear because their confidence was tied to the external. The other rises above because their confidence was drawn from within. The difference is not in what happened to them, what they decided to pull from inside of themselves. That's what separates those who live in fear from those who live fearless. True fearlessness is not flashy. It doesn't mean you always look strong on the outside. Sometimes it looks like getting out of bed on a day you didn't want to. Sometimes it looks like trying again after the last failure nearly crushed you. Sometimes it looks like holding on to hope when everyone else has given up. The outside world may not even notice it, but inside, that's where battles are won. That's where power is drawn. And here's the beauty. Once you realize that fearlessness comes from within, circumstances lose their grip on you. You stop waiting for perfect timing. You stop waiting for ideal conditions. You stop waiting for everything to feel safe. Instead, you rise in the middle of uncertainty. You move forward while things are still shaky. And the more you do, the more you realize that the circumstances were never the source of your strength. They were only the backdrop for you to discover it. So the next time life throws you into a season that looks impossible, remind yourself, what is around me may be unstable, but what is within me is unshakable. Oneness is not about waiting for the storm to clear. It is about finding the calm inside you while the storm still rages. You are not defined by what is happening outside. You are defined by what you choose to release from within. And when you start drawing from that well of inner strength, no circumstance can dictate your courage, no failure can erase your hope, and no fear can hold you captive. That is the place where true fearlessness is born.